With regard to fuel, as we all know, we have to take care of our environment. And with the new requirements to reduce sulfur levels in fuel, one of the interesting things is that it has given our industry, the shipping industry, a chance once again to show innovation. And it's very encouraging to see the new technologies being developed to take advantage of cleaner fuels. The use of low distillate fuel, it's very expensive. It's a little bit more convenient now without changing the structures of the ships, but we look to the future, and the developments of cleaner gases, LNG in particular, as a source of fuel, I think, is the future. And what I like to see is the innovation that's being developed around the environmental requirement to take care of the air pollution and reduce the sulfur levels. As you might be aware, Liberia was the first country to ratify the Maritime Labor Convention, and this is critically important for the crew. You know, the crew shouldn't be treated as commodity. They're important people. They are what makes the ships run. It's what makes this industry run. And what the Maritime Labor Convention has done is brought together all of the individual ILO conventions for the benefit of the seafarers. The implementation is going quite smoothly. There was a lot of concern that there would be difficulties or interruptions. And what we see so far, at least in Liberia's experience, is we have very serious ship owners who care about their crew, and they've taken good care to properly implement the Maritime Labor Convention. So I don't see that there's a major change from our perspective, because the ship owners using Liberia generally are taking good care of their crew. But what it has done, much like the ISM code in years past, it's consolidated all the requirements and brought things together. So there's a single location to understand how to deal with the crew and more particularly their welfare issues. And if I think about things like the complaint handling procedures and the processes required by the Maritime Labor Convention, now we have a smooth and efficient system. So the crew can air their grievances, and the crew and the ship owner can work out together the proper resolution when there may be misunderstandings. I think this is probably a very critical and appropriate World Maritime Day theme. This, at the bottom line, from the point of a regulator, which we at the Liberian Registry are, is to make sure there's effective implementation. And my colleagues and I work very hard to ensure effective, efficient, and practical implementation of new rules. However, the entire industry doesn't operate this way. There are other regulators that are not enforcing the rules effectively. And this is really troublesome because the result of ineffective implementation is more regulation. I think the industry has enough regulations, and creating new regulations just because of political reaction or public reaction to accidents, it's very short-sighted. I think about the ISM code. This should be the last regulation of the IMO, because every new requirement, whether it's for pollution or for security or safety, can be incorporated into the ISM code. We don't need new conventions. We don't need new regulations. What we need is to encapsulate it in a single operating concept, such as the ISM code, improve management, and then effectively implement and enforce provisions like the ISM code to make sure that the areas affecting safety or environmental protection are in that one convention, the ISM code. And if it's effectively implemented, there's not a need for new regulations as a so-called knee-jerk reaction. So I applaud the IMO, and I ask my fellow flag states that we work together to be effective in the implementation of the existing requirements. Too much time, too much energy, and too much expense is being wasted on new regulations. Let's focus on the ones we have. Let's make sure that they're working correctly. Let's not focus on making new regulations. I started off saying, when we spoke about the Maritime Labor Convention, it's critically important that we're working together with the crew that work on board the ships. These are the people who work very hard for the safe passage at sea, whether it's cargo or, in the case of passenger ships, people for pleasure. And when we look at these recent disasters, it's very unfortunate, it's very sad to be part of this industry and see such grave loss of life or potential destruction in environmental disasters. We have to focus on the so-called human element. We need to invest in our people, make sure they're properly trained. make sure that they're not forced to make commercial decisions that are against the issues of safety and environmental protection. Whether it's the construction or the modification of ships, it has to be carefully looked after. Whether it's instructing the master to perform so-called shortcuts at sea or varying the routes for commercial convenience rather than making sure that safety is paramount. These are the challenges that the industry and the people on board face. So we have to empower and educate the crew on board to allow them to make the decisions that are in the best interest of the greater good and not the short-term decision because of a particular schedule or commercial consideration that places less value on safety or environmental protection.